Welcome to the Full Dive Gaming Podcast and a special mini episode here. In this episode, we're sitting down with Assassin32, one of our most active Discord members and a new and budding YouTube star. And we're going to deep dive actually into one of the Q&A questions Assassin asked a while back. Assassin, thank you so much for being here.
I am excited to be here. This is kind of a dream of mine.
Well, that's awesome for us to hear that you feel that way and you crossed it off the bucket list after today. But while we're saying thank you to you, we got to thank our sponsor, Asterion Products. They make high quality VR headset stands, accessories, mats, all kinds of VR stuff. You need to check them out and use code FULLDIVE10 to save another 10% on Amazon on their products. Well, you know, we're pretty excited for you to be here. You asked a question a while back in the Q&A section, and you said, basically, for someone that's never used the original PSVR, are there any exclusives or experiences that make it worth buying in 2023? Do you want to tell our listeners here kind of the story, what's happened over the last couple of months, what we did to help really come up with a real answer to this question?
I just got into VR about a year ago, and the Quest 2 is really my only experience with VR. I've used my son's Valve Index for just a few minutes, and I'm kind of a completionist. So I really wanted to know, with PSVR 2 coming out, is there any reason to go back and use PSVR, the original? And Jay and Nat were nice enough. They loaned me a PSVR and a PS4 Pro to use at my house for a few months and practice some things and see what I think about it.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing to be able to do that, because the one thing I would need to point out here, because for people who don't know this, like if you get a Quest 2, you can pretty much go back and play all the Quest 1 games. If you get a Valve Index or a Vario Aero, you can go back and play the original Rift games if you do some modding, or the original Vive games. It's all pretty backwards compatible. But PSVR 2 is now out, and it does not have most of the PSVR 1 games. And PSVR 1 was already known for having a lot of exclusives that didn't come to Quest and didn't come to PC. So it's something that was very kind of separated from the entire industry when Sony decided not to make them backwards compatible. So yeah, it feels like you kind of missed out if you never played one.
Yeah. And really, being someone that likes to complete everything. I mean, when I'm doing Grand Theft Auto, I do all the side missions. So I really felt like I'd be potentially missing out. And then honestly, listening to Full Dive Gaming Podcast and hearing Nat talk about Astro Bot made me really want to see what I was missing.
Yes. Speaking of Astro Bot, I feel like I want to dive into that. That's, another excuse to talk about Astro Bot. I'm excited. So let's, before we get into Astro Bot, I guess we should talk about the headset itself.
I think I jumped the gun on that one. That was me.
I got really excited just hearing the word Astro Bot, but it makes sense. We should probably talk about the actual headset. So what was it like using the headset, the comfort, the wire, the controllers, all that stuff? How did it feel using the original PSVR?
So it's honestly pretty frustrating. From going from a Quest 2, where I can just pick it up, push a button, and I'm in, and then going to, I got to get it set on the right channel. And then, did the camera move at all in between the last time I played? And then the wire. And I know it's kind of a joke about the wire, but the wire became a big deal for me. It made me constantly aware I was wearing a VR headset and broke the immersion. So stepping on the wire and kind of tilting my head every once in a while, causing me to have to adjust the headset, was kind of frustrating. On the positive side, though, I will say that the headset is extremely comfortable, and it's nice and lightweight, takes all the weight off of your face. You can wear it for days, and it doesn't seem to ever bother me.
Yeah, maybe the 10 days in VR that J-Brat did should have been in the PSVR headset.
He could have went to 12 days in VR if he had a PSVR on.
Ugh.
Sounds like a plan.
The PSVR, there was things I missed because we went from PSVR to, PC and then, of course, Quest. So it was a very different transition to suddenly become wireless after all this time of being wired. But the thing about the PSVR that still, even to this day, kind of drives me crazy was the PSVR had some great exclusive big games, full games, good looking games. And on the Quest 2, we get some games now and again, but it still feels like a lot of them are those little experiences, something you're going to spend an hour in and be done with it. So now that you've tried this, what do you think? Do you feel like you kind of missed out starting on Quest 2? Do you feel like it would have been a different experience if you had started on a different headset?
I do. I do feel like I missed out. And to be 100% honest, I am thinking about looking for a nice used PSVR to go back and see the things I missed. I don't know that I would ever have time to go through all of them, but it would be fun to give it a shot. And I think some of those exclusives that Sony has are so good, they're worth going back and getting.
Mm-hmm. And I also think when you start out with the PSVR, you don't notice the cord as much. I mean, us going back to it now we do, but if it was something that you started with when that was the only option, then it wasn't as annoying because you didn't know anything different. So
for the people that had flip phones, you were happy with your flip phone.
Yes.
And then when they came out with big giant touch screens, you forgot about the flip phone pretty quickly, but you were happy with it when you had it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And then for me, honestly, I got to tell you, I play sitting down most of the time. Sometimes the flip phone comes back. I play sitting down most of the time. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but after having the PSVR for about a month, I finally moved the camera to a lower position and then sat down in a comfortable chair. And I got to tell you, seated PSVR is equal to playing Quest 2. The cord isn't a problem when you're seated. You're not stepping on it. It's not getting all twisted up. It just disappears.
Nice. Yeah, good to know. And we also, we didn't loan you all of our various cable management systems, which we have. But even when you have those, it still is kind of there. But when you're sitting, it's less of an issue because, like you said, you're not like stepping on it and stuff. So that definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about the actual headset. I think it's time to get into Astro Bot. Let's so excited to talk about it with you. So as we all know, Astro Bot is one of my favorite PSVR games. It's a game where it's like a VR. Okay, I'm bad at Lee. Why don't you tell us about Astro Bot?
So Astro Bot, it's a platformer. It's a VR platformer, and you're controlling Astro Bot, but the way they do it in Astro Bot is even your character is part of the game. It's part of the strategy. It's part of the action. There are times where you need to headbutt certain things or move your head out of the way to help Astrobot get to where Astrobot needs to go. It's honestly really incredible the ways that they integrate the player into the game. I spent the entire time honestly pretty amazed and going, why isn't this being done now? How is this, this is what, 7 years old or whatever it is, and no one's been able to recreate it yet. It's kind of ridiculous. They need to step up their game a little bit.
Right. I agree. What were some of the things you said? There's like the headbutting. What are some of the other things that got you more immersed in the game or got you as the person, as the like robot thing?
So they found ways, while you're controlling Astrobot, they also might fire a soccer ball at you, and you have to hit it with your head and bounce it back to the enemy that's on the screen. I thought that was really cool the way they did that. One of the first games in VR that I really fell in love with was Moss and Moss Book 2. And they're great games. They're absolutely beautiful. Moss is the most adorable character in gaming I think I've ever seen. Astrobot beats it in every way. I mean, it's just a little bit better at everything it does. The way Moss works, if you haven't played it or haven't played it much, is you're moving the mouse around and you're helping out by moving obstacles out of the way using your controllers as kind of hands in the game. But you always feel like it's Quill's game, the mouse from the game. It's Quill's game, and you're observing and helping out every once in a while. Astrobot makes you feel like you're always part of the action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely loved that too. It's so unique. There's not a lot of VR games. There's a couple that are like third person, but you're you're still like involved in the game somewhat. But this Astrobot does it so well and has so many different things, like the like blowing on the flower in the one.
I forgot about that.
And actually using the controller's capabilities that aren't used in that many things, like the little trackpad.
Oh yes,
you're actually using the trackpad, and I'm like, why do you think that PlayStation hasn't brought that in brought Astro Bot into like PSVR 2?
I don't know. I can't figure out why that wasn't a day one game for PSVR 2. I can't figure out why at Halloween we don't see Astro Bot costumes. I don't know why we haven't had the Astro Bot movie and the Saturday morning cartoon show, if they still do Saturday morning cartoons. It seems like, I think Lipnox mentioned it one time that Astro Bot should be Sony's version of Mario. And Astro Bot should be like, it's just perfect.
I've thought that since I first got into the game, it just feels like a Mario-esque game. It's like the perfect VR platformer. I love platformers. And it's not like other VR platformers that are just like kind of 2D and you're like, why am I even playing this in VR? It just does such an amazing job at it.
I do think it's funny though that the Astrobot has two different fighting modes. Actually has three, but he punches his enemies, but he kicks his friends.
That's true.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of a message there that when your friends are really in trouble, maybe the best thing to do is kick them right in the ass.
Yes. Oh my
gosh.
That's
a great connection.
What did you think of if you got through a level and you didn't save all of Astro's friends? How did you feel about that with your completionist mind?
And that's a problem for me. I felt guilty. If you haven't played it, while you're playing along, you can hear these little robots saying, "Save me" or "Help me." And there are times where you're past where you can do that, but you can still hear their little voices. I felt guilty. I wanted to go back and replay the levels. So I think there's a lot of replayability there to go back and get every one of your little friends.
Yeah.
Which levels were your favorite ones? Because they have so many different types, like cave ones, water ones.
3-3 Feed Willy. I actually remember it off the top of my head. It's a water level, and it's just brilliantly done. The waves feel like they're real waves, and you're moving through them. And one of the things that happens is with the headset, if you dip your head into the water, when you pop back up, there's water that's running down the screen. And Astro Bot, if he swims too close to your face, he'll kind of stick to your mask, and it feels like you're wearing a diver's mask. And he'll turn around and wave at you sometimes, or put on his own VR headset. It's just absolutely adorable. It's so well done.
There's also some speculation now that something is coming because Team Asobi, the one that made Astro Bot, changed their like Twitter profile picture and banner or something. So people are all like, oh, what does this mean? Does this mean they're working on Astro Bot? Does this mean it's coming? So hopefully either Astro Bot 2 or honestly, I would even take an original Astro Bot port to PSVR 2 for the people who just never got to play it and how much better it could look now on that headset.
For sure. I mean, for me, I've been a gamer my entire life, but I got out of it probably 12-ish years ago and just kind of faded away and just lost interest. And VR's brought me back. The only reasons I can think of now to ever get a console, if they come out with Astro Bot in VR, there's a chance I'll get a PS5 and also the next Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, yes.
I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that if GTA comes out on PS5, I'm back.
Agreed.
Now, another thing in Astro Bot that really makes it that like flagship game for me is the music. What did you think of the music in the game?
Okay, so the music is good enough that my wife was in the kitchen and I'm playing and she kind of yells in, and I barely heard her through the headset, but I hear her yell, "That music is awesome." And she's right. It's really, really engaging and super well done. It's not video game music. It's just music.
We were actually just listening to the Astro Bot music in the car because it's so good.
I have Walkabout Mini Golf playlist on Spotify. I play in the backyard sometimes.
Nice.
It is awesome. Good hammock music.
Yes.
That's how you know a game's music is striking if you're thinking about it when you're not playing the game. Astro Bot there's so many things that add up to make it an amazing game, and it's not the music, it's not the character, it's not the cues, it's just all of it comes together so well. Before we move on to another one of my favorite PSVR games, is there anything else about Astro Bot you wanted to really share here?
I don't know. I just want to plead with Sony to really get on the Astro Bot bus and make it happen. Astro Bot needs to be everywhere. It needs to be their Mario.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hard to
I
agree.
fully agree. And PS5, they got Astro's Playroom. They brought it out a little bit there. So hopefully we're making baby steps and strides. But one of the biggest reasons that I kept a PSVR, that I told other people they need to play a PSVR, was a sci-fi futuristic game. It's a first-person shooter, and it's called Farpoint. And if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard of Farpoint. But if you haven't, we won't spoil much of the story here. But basically, you're launched onto an alien planet trying to figure out what happened to everyone else who got there. You end up with your gun in your hands. And this was built around the PlayStation VR aim controller, which was their two-handed, fully immersive, real feeling kind of assault rifle type weapon. And Lee, you got to get into Farpoint and try it for the first time. What did you think?
Okay, so right off the bat, the aim controller is cool.
Mhm.
The aim controller works so well in that game. I love the way that there was different kinds of weapons that you could use, but it's all done with the aim controller just by moving a certain way. You could kind of reach over your shoulder. You could take the easy way out and just hit a button if you wanted to, but it just worked really well. Whether you were using a shotgun or the initial rifle or a sniper rifle, they all worked really well in the game. One of the things, I finished that game, and then after talking with Jay later on, I realized that I'd missed so many things. I think I played a little too quick. I didn't realize how many different weapons you could get in the game. And Jay, if you know off the top of your head how many, I think I only played with like 3 or 4.
There's 5 types of weapons, but you can unlock 4 types of each one as well. So like there's 4 different types of assault rifles you can unlock and 4 different types of shotguns. But a lot of that's done through some of the DLC, like the versus and the co-op. It's easier to unlock it there than any other way. But yeah, it does create a lot of variety, and it can really change how you play the story if you go back and play it.
Yeah, that would be worth replaying and just kind of taking my time on that one. I think I was kind of excited in the first few days I had it, and I just blasted through in like 2 different play sessions. I think I got all the way through.
Oh man, nice.
But yeah, great storyline. Get your heart rate up. Some of the enemies in that game are pretty massive. I mean, there were times where I just remember stopping and going, "Whoa, look at what's coming at me now."
Right. And what did you think of like the scale in the PSVR? Because scale is, I've definitely noticed it's very different in different headsets. Like those big giant enemies, did they feel really big and giant to you in the game?
Yeah, they absolutely did. I actually compare some of the fighting to a game called Crashland for for Quest 2. Similar enemies, kind of giant spider type enemies, but the scale was much larger on Farpoint. It really was the point where I was like, wow, that's the biggest enemy I'm going to see. And then there was one that just dwarfed it. And then you go, wow, that's the biggest enemy I'm going to see. And nope, you're wrong. They get bigger.
It's I don't know what it is, if it's screens, if it's lenses, but there's something about certain headsets when you see something big, it feels imposing and it feels huge. And Farpoint really took advantage of that in the game. Now, you mentioned it's got a great story, it's got variety, but it was developed in a very tricky way so that when you're moving through the game, they didn't want you to have to use an analog stick to turn and risk making people sick. They built the game in this like linear path where you're constantly moving in a forward direction and shooting off the sides, shooting towards enemies, but you don't ever have to actually turn with an analog stick throughout the entire game. What did you think of that?
So the linear path does kind of break the immersion just a little bit. There's enough there. You can walk over and look over the edge of a big cliff and see what's going on down there, and there's enough of things like that. But your pathway is pretty direct. You're going pretty much straight ahead the entire time. It does break the immersion just a bit, but honestly, if the game is good enough, all that disappears. Even going back to like some of the hardware limitations of the PSVR, Mura screen door effect, it's there. I notice it on the loading screens because I'm just watching a loading screen. But once the gameplay starts, if they do a good enough job making the game, it all disappears. None of that matters anymore.
So true. And of course, when we talk about Farpoint, I always think of back in the day when we played a lot of co-op and versus. I know you didn't really get a chance to test that out. Do you feel like the co-op and versus modes would have added a lot to the game, or do you think it was solid on its own in that story mode?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, honestly, co-op would have been kind of neat, being able to communicate and say, okay, you get the creatures that are up at the top, and I'll aim for the ones that are at the bottom. I could see really easy doing sort of a player versus player shooter thing with Farpoint. There's lots of opportunities to either have some distance weapons like sniper rifles or be more up close and fight within that world.
Yeah, they were those that were added later. They were DLCs that were added later on, free DLC that came with the game. But co-op, it's interesting. You pick these missions that are kind of like a subset of the actual game. It's not necessarily the game, but it's a mission where you're moving through, different enemies are coming at you and you're trying to fight together, pick up more weapons along the way to help you, but you get to take in 2 weapons with you of your choice depending on what you've unlocked. Versus was a very different mode where you're one-on-one, but there's these spawn pads where if you get in the spawn pad, you stay in there long enough without getting killed, you'll spawn in the enemies on your side. So you'll spawn in little spiders, or you'll spawn in the drones. You'll spawn something in to help you try and kill and hunt down that other person. And it's really interesting because the strategy changes because you're trying to think like, what kind of enemy can I bring in that will reveal their position, or what kind of enemy can I bring in that will just straight up kill them for me? And you're spending more time in these pads trying to spawn things, where some people, they just try to come at you and kill you themselves. And if you used the pads more, you would probably win the round.
Yeah, I did not use, I remember. I was like, I'm gonna murder you.
It sounds interesting though. I mean, those different kinds of strategies on things like that really make the game kind of unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really something. But one problem you'd have, it wanted you to play the best of like 2 rounds or something. And some people would rage quit if they could see that you were already going to beat them too much the first round. So that can get frustrating.
So the world needs to eliminate those people somehow. I don't know how, but they need to go away.
Put
They're the
everyone in a
absolute
game
worst.
like this with a headset that could shoot a spike into them if they rage quit or
Yes. Maybe that's the use for Palmer Lucky's headset that he built, is give them to those people.
Yes.
Oh
The aim controller, when it came out, was pretty revolutionary, and Farpoint was the game they designed to show it off and what it could do. The thing about it is we have never seen another version of it on any headset, unless you pay a ton of money on computer. There are some options. But what people try to do something like this instead is you can buy these controller stocks that you snap your controllers into, and it's supposed to feel more like a gun. What do you think? Have you tried some of those? What do you think in comparison to how the aim controller was baked in?
I have tried a few of those things to kind of help you out. It's tough because there's always an issue. For instance, I know you reviewed it, and I have. It's the AMVR fishing reel, where you put your controllers in, and there's magnets that hook. And honestly, I do believe it made me a better fisherman, but the magnets are kind of hard to pull off. So each time you kind of separate those, it breaks that immersion just a little bit. And it seems like the gun stocks I've used, honestly, the simplest, Mr. Tass, the quick aim controller, is a good one. Slide the controller in, and then it's just got kind of the pointy rod there, and you use it to just put pressure on your hand to hold things in place to steady it. I think those are great for games where you're shooting a sniper rifle or something at a distance. Helps you steady things quite a bit. In general, they all seem to have some kind of a flaw that breaks the immersion or makes it harder to use, or actually gives you a disadvantage sometimes with some of the magnets being a little too strong. I know with Mr. Tass, he recommends putting tape over them to just kind of weaken them a little bit to get them more customized where you want them to be.
Yeah, I loved the aim controller because the problem is, and this is why it's a problem with the stocks, with the aim controller, the developers had to build the game for the aim controller, which makes it hard to just bring any game into it. They have to make, the buttons line up, the controller line up with the actual physical one. And so for a game like Pavlov, where you go from a pistol to an M16 to an Uzi, as something like an aim controller isn't always going to feel right because your hands aren't going to be in the right positions. But when you have a game like Farpoint where the game always works, your hands are always in the right place, it's so much more immersive than those gun stocks that I'm just like, please, PSVR 2, find a way to make an aim controller 2 with stronger haptics, those new adaptive triggers. It would be the most amazing experience.
Yes.
I imagine you'd have to have a big player base in order to develop a controller like that and make it pay off. In the end, it's worth it. But until you have enough players to where you're selling, you got to sell the PS5, then you got to sell the PSVR 2. Now you got to sell this expensive controller. It does make it better. Let's just hope that Sony or Meta get enough customers that they can afford to do those kinds of things.
Yes.
Sony, just give us Astro Bot and it will bring everyone into PSVR 2.
Astro Bot really is the solution to all the problems
Just
with Sony.
do it. So another game that I really liked in PSVR 1 was a scary game called Until Dawn Rush of Blood. It's a roller coaster game. I hate roller coasters in real life, but I love roller coasters in VR. What did you think of Until Dawn Rush of Blood?
Okay, Until Dawn Rush of Blood. So one of the things about me, I'm a horror fan. I've always been a horror fan. I love horror movies, horror movie trivia. It's all good. I'm fine with all of it. And then horror in VR gets me. It gets me on a different level. And I find myself playing a game for 15 minutes and then going, okay, I'm good. And then taking it off, taking a breather, and a couple of days later, I'll get back to it. So Rush of Blood, there was a few times that really got me when the clowns are coming at you and they're just kind of jumping right in front of you. And the noises and the sounds and just the overall creepiness, it got to me a few times. And that was the one game that I had to just keep coming back to time and time again, because I would do it for 15 or 20 minutes and have to stop. Like it just spooked me. There were times that the hair was standing up on the back of my neck.
Yeah, it gets you.
It definitely does. The controllers were a little funky. I really wish the aim controller would work with that. Because there were times where they just were off and you'd have to do something to recalibrate them real quick.
Yeah. Until Dawn Rush of Blood it's probably, if you have your area set up, one of the best games for those controllers, sadly, because you sit in place, your controllers are out in front of you, you're not turning and stuff. And it just reminds us, after all this time on Quest, how PSVR 1 controllers really had some struggles in tracking. I love Until Dawn Rush of Blood because it puts you in that Until Dawn universe. It's a very, it's a decently known IP, but it's a real twist on the game with these creepy roller coasters. Late in the game, and I'll say just a little bit of a spoiler alert for those out there. The game's been out forever. If you haven't played it by now, you're probably never going to, but hey, there's a spider level. Did you make it to the spider level?
I don't think I did.
It's one of the last levels, and that was one of the worst experiences of my life. I think I had a haptic vest kind of thing on, and I had a fan blowing on me, and it just felt like every time the spiders were crawling on my body, it felt like they really were, and I was screaming and freaking out the whole time. I hated it so much. What do you think? If you had tried the spider level, how would you have done?
Oh, I think I would have been in trouble. I think it would have been one that I had to shut it off and restart it a few times and get used to it. VR just hits me on a different level, and those levels of horror games really make it tough for me to get through. I had never played Batman. What was it? Batman Arkham VR.
Asylum. Oh,
and
so
I know
good.
it's a short game. But there were times where you're in the morgue and you're looking at bodies, and you have to slide the drawer out and look at the body. And I'm looking at that drawer and I'm going, I don't want to do it. but I did. And then the one that really got me at the end of that one was, and again, I don't know if this is a spoiler at this point, it's been out a while, but you're talking to the Joker in an insane asylum and he's in a padded room, and you just open the little window in front of him. And he tells you to come closer.
Come here.
Yeah. When he tells you to come closer, I physically was in my living room at 2:00 in the morning, and I physically said, no. Like, I told the Joker, no, I'm not going to. And then it took me he just keeps telling you, come closer. And the way he says it and the realism.
Come closer.
Yes.
Oh, so creepy.
After 2 or 3 minutes, I finally had to out loud say, you're in your living room. It's 2:00 in the morning. It's just a game.
You're safe.
Yeah.
And then I stepped forward, and then things happened.
Oh my gosh, that game is excellent too.
It really is. Yeah.
I miss those early games. They were so good. And I just feel like we haven't had, like, okay, Horizon's cool, it's beautiful and stuff, but it's like the games with those really good stories, and it just really pulls you in. I want that. I want it back.
So what do you think it is? I mean, have they gotten lazy? What's the difference? Why are we still talking about Half-Life Alyx every time we talk about the best game ever?
I think that they just are trying to have mass appeal with things instead of making good games. Like Horizon, they're like, oh, it's Horizon. It's this big title and like whatever. And like the intro to Horizon is really good. And it's a gorgeous game, but it's like I don't care about this plot line. Like I don't want to climb around for a million hours. Like give me something interesting. Give me a story, give me a puzzle, give me a freaking saving little aliens. Like we need something interesting to bring us in.
There's very few games that you get emotionally invested in.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Those early games you got emotionally invested, and for some reason these newer games, I think Fortnite was a worldwide phenomenon, and Population 1 in VR is kind of like that. It's fun, but they're going for like these fun shooter, quick get in and out games. Gorilla Tag took over, and like these are all games that are fun in their own right, and they show off what VR can do. But I want to like get immersed and involved in a story that takes me somewhere, and we're kind of losing that storyline element.
Yeah.
Enough with the tech demos.
Yes.
We know what the tech can do. It's great.
Right.
Let's get some good stories. Let's get something that you are passionate about and care about.
Right.
Batman Arkham VR in 45 minutes, I was into it. And then right when I really loved it, it ended.
Yeah. God, that game so good and looked so good. And I even think of like the really old pre PSVR days when we just had the little like phone headsets, and there was Land's End, and that just came, some of those old games just came back to the, like you could access them on Quest, and I played some Land's End. I was like, wow, like this is such a simple old game, but it's amazing. Like it has an interesting story. You're like, you feel like you have telekinetic powers, and it's like, it just shows how powerful it can be when you care about the story, or when it has something, it's using VR to do something you can't do in other games. And I just want to see that. Give it to us. Please.
Even with the modern games that are out now, I mean, Walkabout Mini Golf is incredibly simple, and it's the graphics are so basic. But how many times have you been in that game and you're waiting for someone to take a shot and you go to lean on a post that isn't there?
Right.
They find a way with the mechanics to bring you into the game. So the storyline games are the same thing. Come up with good storyline, and people will love it, and people will play it, and they'll recommend it, and VR will grow.
I think a part of it too is, as VR's gotten, the games have improved, we've overcomplicated them too. This happens with all gaming. It used to be, something like Batman, or you had like a grip button and a thumb button. There weren't a ton of combinations. Like now it's like, gosh, when you play a first person shooter, you have to know exactly how to reload a real weapon. And the other games, you have all these buttons. You're like, okay, what button is it to now reload? What button is it to open my inventory? All these things that you can do overcomplicate the actual feeling of how to play the game enough that you don't get as immersed. We need the games that, like, the inventory needs to be simple. Reach over and grab your backpack and pull it out and grab something out of your backpack. Walking Dead did a good job with that. But some of these games have so many little steps to everything that it's just, as we've evolved in VR and we've tried to make the games more complex, we've lost some of that. Just make it immersive and keep it simple. That's why Job Simulator is still one of the biggest games out there. It literally only uses the triggers. Like, how simple is that? But yet you can put anyone into that game and they will have an absolute blast.
In Job Simulator, I dropped a coffee cup on the floor, and I went to pick it up, and I went to lean on my virtual desk to balance myself to pick up the coffee cup. It's a cartoon. It looks like The Simpsons, but wow, I felt like I was there. I felt like I was in a cubicle.
Yeah, you need these simple mechanics to work over and over again the right way every time. And so when you add all these new steps, you try to make these games really complex with these systems, I think that we lose something. And the other thing about PSVR that we've lost kind of in the whole gaming world, but as we've moved away from consoles, or we just don't use consoles the way we used to, is local co-op, couch co-op games, like we've called them forever. So that was one of the first things when you wanted to come over and try the PSVR. I wanted to show you that because I knew that was something you'd never experienced on Quest. just isn't a thing really. What did you think, like the Playroom VR and the stuff like that, where basically, for those of you out there who don't know of it, one person's in the headset and they might see something totally different, but they're either fighting with or fighting against or playing a hide and seek game with all the other people who are using controllers watching on the TV.
That was pretty amazing, honestly. With a fun group of people, some of the things that you're doing in there where I'm in like the Wild West shooter game and I'm the sheriff or whatever I was, and I walk into the bar and I'm shooting the ghosts and you have to tell me which ones to shoot. Simple mechanic, but it was fun. I mean, and it seemed like it was kind of fun for you guys too, even without you being in a VR headset.
Yeah. It's great party. They have great party games where you can like get everyone in, everyone's involved. No one feels like left out. And that's a thing that especially the original PSVR did so well, is that even though you're in this headset, you're not isolated from everyone else because you can see on the TV what they're doing. You can, on those couch co-op games, you can interact and all play together. And why don't we have that now?
So I know it's like Acron Attack of the Squirrels. There's kind of a thing where people are on their phones on an app as the squirrels, and I'm the oak tree throwing things at them. I know there's a few of those. Was it Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes?
Yes, that's a great one.
I love
I have that one.
Game.
I have not even installed it, but I have it.
Oh my gosh, we gotta play it. It's so good.
Deal.
It's
no
so
takebacks.
fun.
Yeah, there's been some attempts, and some of those games were older games that were on these systems to play multiplayer, and they tried to get them to Quest. But there's nothing quite like the experience of 3 people have PlayStation controllers. They're used to using PlayStation controllers, and one person's in the headset, and you're chasing them down or you're working to protect them. There's just these different missions, this different feeling of it all. And it's something that I keep hoping PSVR 2 will bring back, because it just is something in the VR community we miss, because like you could have that friend over who's scared to put the VR headset on, and but then they can play something with you, and maybe it's going to help give them the courage to, okay, now I'll try being the one in the headset.
Yeah, it's slowly but surely just keep moving them towards buying a VR headset and starting their own YouTube channel.
Yes.
Apparently that's the end goal. It's the end goal with everyone here.
I think my whole neighborhood's going to have their own YouTube channel soon.
Nice.
I'm excited to see the collaborations we get from that.
So you said at about the top of the episode that you were thinking you might look for a PSVR 1. If you can find a PSVR, PS4 like bundle that someone's getting rid of for $300 to $400 total for the whole thing, after your experiences in these last couple months, do you think you would go for it?
I think I would. Yeah. I mean, like I say, I'm a completionist, but the experience I got with 3 to 4 games, they are just as fun. They are just as immersive, if not more immersive, with some of the older technology. Honestly, having the camera on PSVR added some things. At some of the games that we played at my house, where you were on the couch or telling me how things are working, and then at the end of the level, it takes a picture of us.
Yes.
That's not possible with a Quest.
Yeah.
It's just not there. I mean, we could all just take our own camera, I guess, and set it up, but that's built into the system.
That
so
is
yeah,
a fun thing.
So I think if I could find a decent setup, I think I would do it and try to work it into the rest of the Quest games that I'm working on.
There's just so many now. Yeah. There's too many games. That was one thing too that was different about the PSVR experience, because back then it was new, and like every Tuesday was the day games would come out, and it might be 1, it might be 2, and it might be 0. And I remember like every Tuesday I'd see what came on PSVR. I would just buy it because it was like they were like $10 or $15 typically, and I was just like, I want to experience what else it can do. I want all of it, and so I was like buying games every week for the longest time. Now there's so many games you have to be selective, and it's harder in that respect.
And the game prices are creeping up for sure.
Oh yeah.
Asgard's Wrath is $60, but you get the original. I mean, you get Asgard's Wrath 2 and 1, the Rift version. But
yeah, if you have a PC,
it's still $60.
Yeah, it's changing.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Are they going to keep it as that bundle, or are they going to separate the original Asgard's Wrath and just do it for $40 maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see, but I'm not excited that prices keep rising because the problem with VR is you want to experience everything you can. It's not like
Yes.
regular gaming where you see a game like, oh, that game looks cool. I want to play that game. With VR, it's like, hey, this game you get to ride a raft, or this game you
Yeah.
get to fly a plane, or this game you get to drive a car, and you want to feel what VR can offer you in every single little thing you can do. So you end up buying every single game to get those different experiences, and it adds up.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge difference between like console flat screen gaming and VR, though, is we used to talk about, I want to get this game so I can play as someone who skydives.
Mhm.
And then in VR, we say, let's go skydiving.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're doing it. So it's just a whole nother level.
Yeah, it takes
sure.
you there. Well, Assassin32, you started a YouTube channel because you have found this passion. When I met you, you were just consuming the content and talking about it. Tell our listeners who are out there who have enjoyed this episode, where do they find you? What are they going to find on your channel? Give us a little taste.
So my channel is Assassin32 VR, and that's the name on YouTube, Instagram. It is on Twitter. It's everywhere. So what I'm doing, I started off doing a lot of shorts, and it was to really learn how to edit. I was doing some walkabout mini golf shorts and things like that, just to learn how to edit and learn the whole system. I've started doing some product reviews. Just recently did a great interview that I'm hoping will come out in the coming week with a developer. He's got a great story. He lost over 100 pounds in VR in a game he developed for himself.
Wow.
So yeah, pretty cool story with him. But yeah, product reviews, game reviews. I want to start doing a Saturday morning live stream. I think that would be kind of fun. A fun thing to do. And if I'm going to play anyway on a Saturday morning, why not hit the button and record and see what kind of fun we can have.
Start with Job Simulator, and you can bring back the Saturday morning cartoons you were questioning earlier.
Yes.
That'd be perfect.
Well, of course, for those of you out there who are listening to the podcast or watching it here on YouTube, there will be links down below. Check out Assassin's channel. Hit him with a follow. You're coming up on 100 subscribers already, right?
Really close. Yeah, 95.
That's impressive.
Nice. Well, hopefully either by the time this episode airs or very quickly after, you'll hit that mark. Because that's a big
to
deal.
Assassin32.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'm planning a giveaway. When I hit 100 subscribers, I'll do the official announcement. But
nice.
Lots of game giveaways kind of in one package. Basically, when I hit 500 subscribers, then I'll give it all away. So invite your friends and we'll do it faster.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you again for chatting with us. It was so nice to revisit Astro Bot again.
Thanks for having me. I got to tell you, so full dive gaming, when I first got into VR, full dive gaming was where I learned about the history of VR. And for anybody that hasn't done it, go back and listen to those previous episodes or watch them on YouTube. Some of them are kind of fun to watch. There's all kinds of fun things going on in the background, but it is almost a complete history of consumer VR. And there were plenty nights where I'm laying in bed with the podcast playing on my phone next to the bed, and my wife had to hear Jay and Nat's voices all night long.
Nice.
That's the kind of dedication we appreciate. And to all of you out there, again, thank you. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it's just, we have fun. We talk about the things we love, and it's a nice outlet having the podcast. So thank you, all of you who continue to listen. The reviews we've got out there, the ratings, that means a lot to us too. So again, we're everywhere for you. Everywhere you can go for podcasts, find us, even on Audible. And remember, if you've been thinking about VR for all this time, what's it time to finally do?
Dive on in.
Yes.